Well, hey, Holy Business. I'm here this week with someone who has learned firsthand the value of wealth and how to work on long-term legacy investments for yourself and your family. Matt Moritzio is the founder and CEO of Reconstructing Wealth, and he has a very faith-forward approach to what he does, but that comes with a backstory, of course, and I'm excited to bring him to you to share what he learned going from a minor league ball player and a newlywed who was cut in spring training, sleeping on couches with his new wife, to building a life and a legacy for now his 7 children and his wife to live on for years to come, and instilling something in that legacy of how we should approach wealth and our finances. And Matt may be someone you want to talk to yourself as an entrepreneur and an owner. We are wired to be risk takers, and he can help us make long-term plans for that. But most importantly, it's a story I think we all should hear, and he tells it so vulnerably and transparently. So join me now as I welcome Matt Moritzio. Okay.
I deleted a bunch. Hopefully that works.
So, Matt, thank you so much for coming. You have quite the diverse background, and I'm excited to hear about your journey because it started with baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're right. It did start with baseball. It started really young with baseball. I started when I was 6 years old, I guess, in my preschool graduation yearbook. You know, we had one of those.
Yeah.
Under what do you want to be when you grow up, I wrote baseball player. And that was like my proclamation at that age. Not that I was like a 6-year-old savant that knew what I could tell the future and knew exactly what I was heading toward. But I did really like the game, and I did really see myself being a big leaguer. I wasn't alone. There was a lot of baseball and firefighters and veterinarians and astronauts. You know, there's a lot of them.
Sure.
But I really chased that dream for a long, long time. And I chased it for 20 years. And it got pretty far. I chased it until I was 26, playing with the Royals for 5 seasons in their minor league system. 4 as a catcher, 1 as a pitcher. And eventually, they took the uniform off me, and that was the end of that journey. But that's where it started. And I learned so much about who I am. My faith grew in the latter part of that journey. That a lot of who I am today, I can attribute back to especially those 5 seasons as a professional athlete.
Let's talk about, though, just the dedication of getting plugged into something so young and staying with it. What have you learned about drive and about training and those things from that? Because professional athletes, you know, you can call yourself semi-professional, whatever, but like the push to go from childhood through club sports and college and to move into a professional realm was something. What did you learn in all those seasons?
I learned a lot, but in particular about drive and push. Part of that has always been in me, and I think sports pulled it out of me. I think that I've always been somebody who for whatever reason, God wired me in such a way that I always dreamed big, and I always felt like there was a big calling on my life and that I was supposed to run hard after it. And I don't know where that came from, why he put that in me as a young age, but it's always been there. I also have learned that at a pro level, the talent is given. Like everybody has worked hard to some extent to get there. It really becomes about excelling at the mundane, believe it or not. Now, I'm saying mundane at a very high level.
Sure.
Like these guys, everybody up there was really skilled. But even in baseball, there are nuts and bolts of baseball, the blocking and tackling of baseball. You swing a bat, throw a ball. Like there are certain things you need to be able to execute at a very high level that are considered just fundamental and pretty boring. But they could do that at the highest level really well. And I've learned about drive that as a young kid, even then, often in my life, I've learned I need to zig when most are zagging, I guess is the best way to say it. I've learned that if I feel like there's this calling on my life to live an exceptional life, live a life that, by definition, is an exception. I have to do things people aren't doing, because it would be crazy for me to do what everybody else is doing, but expect that God's going to take me to a different place.
Yeah.
So for me, even at a young age, I recognized that like all my high school teammates in baseball in particular, they're not the ones I'm comparing myself to, because most of them statistically aren't even going to play in college, definitely not after that. And as a 6-year-old, I had this vision, and I'm still chasing it, that I had to do something they weren't doing in order to potentially get to a place they weren't going to go to.
Gotcha.
And that has just stuck with me forever. I'm contrarian, not for the sake of being it, but I look at my life, not that we got into it yet, but played pro sports. I launched a business at 40 with 7 children whom we homeschool. Like, my body of work is not really a poster child for conformity or the norm, So I've always just challenged conventional thinking when there's possibly a better way.
That's really cool to hear. So do you feel like you naturally knew to push that hard and look to mentors that were 10 steps ahead instead of 1 step ahead? Or do you think that's something that was raised in you or trained in you?
I think that hard work, I learned early that was important. My mother was somebody who got up early, and she really instilled work ethic into us. So that was healthy. I have since learned that, in a crazy way, the hardest worker is not necessarily the most rewarded. So there becomes a quality of work and blended with the effort that is required. I'm sure we can talk about that later. But to answer your question, I think the work ethic was learned. What I also realized I did, I think the best way I could say it is I believe that there's probably some divine intervention, but intuitively, instinctively, God showed me that I could not necessarily go to people for advice whose life I was not trying to emulate or to live, or who have not walked the path that I'm trying to walk.
Yeah.
So, for example, I played pitcher and shortstop, speaking of baseball, my whole life, like from when I could walk all the way until college. Again, going into college. I was even drafted in the 48th out of 50th rounds by the Padres, San Diego Padres, as a pitcher shortstop in high school.
Okay.
I didn't go. I went to college at Northeastern, but I'm going into my freshman year of college baseball as the only incoming freshman who's drafted, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And here we are, fall of my freshman year, I convert to catcher per the suggestion of my head coach. And I had to lean on his confidence, borrow his confidence in my potential and my abilities. And then I didn't ask my mom if it's a good idea. I actually asked the scout that drafted me. And I said, hey, listen, you see a lot of good players. You know a lot more about baseball and the track and the trajectory of baseball than I do. My coach is asking me to not pitch and play short, and now you just drafted me as that. Should I go be a catcher? And what I was really asking is, you know this path more than I do. You're further along it. I'm going to borrow your belief and your trust if you say this is a good idea. But I didn't ask my mom, because my mom doesn't know anything about that. She would probably, which I've experienced, the people closest to us will sort of project their insecurities on you because they don't want to see you hurt. So their advice is typically like, no, don't do it. It's scary. You're going to get hurt, So I think that's probably served me pretty well, is figuring out where I want to go and then finding the people that are appropriate to ask the right questions to in those areas.
That's really good feedback, because I think when I talk to a lot of people who are hiring actually new entry-level people or people right out of school, they talk about how shocking it is generationally that so many young or new to their field job offers will openly say in the interview they want to talk to their parents before they make a decision. And that's jarring for me, because that wasn't something, we were taught, like, stand on your own 2 feet. But
Right.
hearing you talk about tweaking that and really leaning into the mentors, scripturally, when Titus talks about the Titus relationships, they're not talking about, it's not parents specifically. So do we think about mentors in that capacity? I don't think we always do when it comes to personal decisions. So you have this trajectory that's like the steep incline where you are challenging and achieving goals your whole life. And then you kind of have this wall you hit.
Yeah.
What did you learn in that season?
I really am grateful for the end of that season, that particular, the baseball season, because I started to grow in my faith finally. And the answer to your question is, what I learned is that everything that I had depended on and I thought could be solid in life was going to fail me. My parents got a divorce. My wife, she's human, so she'll mess up. Baseball had always been there until it wasn't. I realized like I needed something that was solid ground that I could lean on. And my faith was that. So that's my biggest takeaway. I had unintentionally, I had my identity wrapped up in baseball, and I couldn't avoid it. Even when I would fly home for the holidays or off season or whatever, back to the Massachusetts areas where I was living. And even if I saw random people in like my hometown or anything, and I knew of them or they knew of me, they would say, "Oh yeah, you're Matt, you're the baseball player, right?" Like they attached that identity to me, even if I didn't want to. And it wasn't until it was stripped from me, until the Royals said, "Hey, you're no longer good enough for us." And that dream is over. It wasn't until then that I realized, holy smokes, who am I? My identity had been wrapped up in what I did, not who I was. So that's where faith really became, I really started to lean heavily into it. I started to lean into it toward the end of my playing career, but I was grateful for that because I needed it in that season.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a big transition to go through. As you went through drawing nearer to God, how did you begin to discover what you wanted to do next? For someone who's listening that may be in a season of, oh my gosh, what's next?
Yeah, I didn't know what to do. That's the best answer. I wish I had somebody who could tell me what I could tell them now, which was much more about what, as an athlete, what you could bring to the table. Like sales roles would be wonderful. Startup worlds would be wonderful because you're so used to running into walls and juggling multiple hats. And all I knew was, well, I played baseball for a lot. I could probably find a job in a sports business, and I'm in Massachusetts. And there was 3 baseball businesses there. There was All-Star Catching Gear, Reebok when they had world headquarters there, and Franklin batting gloves. I think were somewhere in Massachusetts too. I was applying industry to industry instead of like skills to skills. And that was a real problem because it super narrowed anything that I could potentially go into. I had a business degree with a concentration in entrepreneurship because I knew I was a bit of a maverick in my own mind. Like I wanted to kind of do my own thing, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I figured entrepreneurship was a good concentration then. But when I got out of playing, I had to finish my degree. And now, fast forward, here we are with a baby. I'm the sole provider, and I have basically a brand new grad looking resume, and I have no job. And that's a hard place to start your like real life. So I actually went to a staffing firm because those 3 businesses that I told you about, they did not answer any of my cold messages online. So now I have no job.
You knew baseball. Come on.
Right? That's what I was saying too, but they weren't when they saw my resume, apparently. So I went to the staffing firm because I said, your job is to play matchmaker. Your entire business model is have clients who need a hire and have people like me who need to be hired. Like I need you. You need me. Let's do this. And in that interview process, they actually liked me enough to say, hey, how about joining us instead of going with our clients? Like, how about you do what we do? And I I was so naive to the business world. I was like, is this how it works with you? Do I have to work for you before I work for a client? They were like, no, no, dummy. We're asking you to work for us, not.
We like you.
Yeah. Like that's, oh, I was like, okay, so tell me what that means. And it ended up being a pure sales role. So there's this temporary staffing world, particularly I got into temporary finance and accounting staffing. I didn't know existed. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that flew right under the radar for me. I had no idea it existed, but here I am thrust into it, pure sales, 100 dials a day, 10 to 12 in-person meetings a week.
Wow.
And just stay on that hamster wheel. And I did, because I guess as an athlete, you learn to do what needs to be done more than what you want to do. So I just kept doing what needed to be done, even though making those cold calls, getting yelled at, slammed on the phone, like no answer. Oh, it's mind-numbing work. But I really liked the people, like when I got to meet the people, and I learned sales and eventually did well. Like I was able to support a rapidly growing family. In 3 years, we went from apartment to house, 1 child to 4, 1 car to 2, like life just exploded. And thankfully my career was doing well too, to be able to support that. So I was always the sole provider. But in that, I started to understand business. And similarly, like I got into staffing, one of those in-person meetings, I met the old partners at the firm I used to work for, the wealth management firm. And they said over a random coffee, which was one of my KPIs, I was just hitting my metrics.
Yeah.
They said, hey, how about wealth management? Have you ever considered that as a career for you? And I was like, no, thank you. I appreciate that. But I met a bunch of advisors when I was playing and in this current career, and I've just never been very impressed. So, respectfully, I don't think that that's a career for me. I was tired of selling myself. Basically, in staffing, sure, you have to get that client to like you more than the other guy, is what it boils down to. Because the way you're finding candidates, even though you want to sound like you got a secret sauce, it's not a secret sauce. It's the same. I mean, we're all the same. So you had to be liked more than the next person. And I just said, I don't want to do this my entire life. I want to bring something unique to the table. So that's what I saw wealth management, financial advising, whatever you want to call it. That's what I saw that industry as like a middleman, Me Too type industry. And it is.
Just an extension of what you were doing now.
Yeah. I was like, okay,
at that time.
Am I going to take one hat off and put a new one on and do the same thing? Yeah. Like I didn't want to do that. And truthfully, I wasn't wrong. That's really what my industry is. It wasn't
what
until
brought you back to the table when you said no the first time?
It was a book called Dancing with the Analysts, written by a guy named David Malik. The partner of the old firm that I met for coffee, Ben Beck is his name. He's like, look, I'm going to mail you this book. It's written by my mentor, and it's the investment strategy we use. It's going to be different than anything you'd heard. So if you read it and you like it, let's talk. And I learned the investment strategy through the story. It's a story form. It's not like he mailed me a finance textbook.
Oh, that's cool.
But I read it and I was like, holy smokes, I never heard this before. Like it's individual stocks, it's every day, it's hands-on, it's based off of forward, like the future. And a lot of it made logical sense too, because it's a daily, disciplined, consistent, non-emotional approach to investing. But to me, I'm hearing that and I'm thinking my athletic career. I'm like, daily, consistent, disciplined, non-emotional. Do that over a long period of time. For me, it was 20 years. You eventually see success. And I'm like, oh, this resonates with me as terms of being in the game, feeling like understanding how real success happens. There's very few overnight successes. Usually it's like this 10-year overnight success story.
Right.
And I learned the strategy and I said to myself, holy smokes, like if they do this and I have an opportunity to do this for people, this isn't like that middleman industry I was thinking. This is very hands-on. You're the one that the person's hiring to do what I think they should be doing on your behalf. And while here I am 10 years into the industry, launched my own business a year and a half ago, like it's a calling more than a career. So I guess that tells you how that book went.
Game changer. So how did you get to the point of launching your own company?
When I first said yes to those guys over at Beck Bodie is the name of the company, before I did, which in hindsight was a bold, ridiculous question for me to ask. I don't even know why I did. I said, hey, what's stopping you or what's stopping somebody from doing what you did, which is build your own practice. They were in Merrill Lynch at first. They build their own practice and then move to their own thing. I said, what's stopping somebody from building their own practice with you guys and then going and doing their own thing? Like, it was in my mind that maybe this is an opportunity for me to do my own thing one day. But why would I say that to the person who's about to employ? I didn't even sign the employment agreement yet. But,
what's so special about you? That's what I want to know.
Right. Like, why can't I just do what you did and leave you soon? You know, like, that wasn't really what I was thinking. But I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking, like, there's an opportunity here. And if I like this industry, I feel called to it. Like, maybe that's an entrepreneurial venture. So I tell you that just to say there was always a flame there, but I understand, I understood and still understand what life feels like when you try to take over the driver's seat. Eventually, it might take 20 years, like a baseball career. It might take 20 years to crash and burn, but eventually, if God's not driving the bus, it probably is going to crash and burn in some painful way. So I was very adamant that I did not drive this bus. So I was prayerful throughout the entire decision-making process. Like, is this the right career for me? As a matter of fact, I tried to say no to it so many different ways, but every time I did, God just like kept blowing the doors wide open as to showing me why it was the right one. So I was confident he was leading me there. Therefore, I was confident at some point, if this flame of wanting to start a business was going to be something, it would grow into a fire. And then would be his time for me to move. But honestly, 8 years in, that flame stayed a flame. It was like a candle was lit and just never became anything more than the candle until probably a few years ago. And I started just feeling it on my heart that like, I think it's starting to be time. That flame grew and grew and grew into like this roaring fire. And it's funny, when it did, every time I feel like God's leading me into something that's very uncomfortable, but I feel like is the right move, I tend to buck it and challenge it and say, I don't think this is the right time. Because we had just had our 7th baby. We had recently bought what is the most expensive house anybody in my family's ever bought. Like, it didn't feel like, hey, great time to launch your own business at 40 years old. But I felt like that flame was undeniably growing into a fire. And I guess the best way to say it is I was not running from something. Like, I was not running from them. I was being called to something and I had to take the obedient step. So here I am. That's what led me to launching this. Wow.
Now, your favorite verse, you mentioned, I think you've already kind of said it in 100 different ways telling your story.
You aren't kidding.
It's also like my favorite, but one of my favorites because all of Romans 8, but Romans 8:28. And I was going to read it and you just tell us, how it resonates with you. But we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
I love it because it doesn't promise a good life, meaning it doesn't promise everything's easy street when you begin to follow him. But it does promise that all things can be used for good. So even in the trials and the tragedies, and you hear it said a million different ways, your test can be your testimony. People's biggest purpose often lies next to their biggest pains. Like, it depends on how you want to say it, but Romans 8:28 says that to me. It says you will go through hard times, and even then, not that God says I'm going to intentionally make you struggle now, right? I don't think he's a good God, and I don't think he's intentionally bringing tragedy into my life. But even through the tragedy, I believe there can be good, so long as we're in tune with him and where he's leading us through it. Even in my baseball career, I remember when and I know it sounds silly because people can say, you're playing baseball for a living. Like, what can be really that bad? And I couldn't hit water if I fell off a boat. It felt like the field was one giant glove. And for me, that was really devastating toward the end of my career. Now, I know people can hear that and be like, oh, boo-hoo, like you couldn't get a hit. Too bad. Welcome to the real world. But for me, when it's something you've only known for 20 plus years and all of a sudden you're terrible at it, that was a really hard struggle for me. And I've learned even through that, like, look at my life today. So like even though that was a tragedy, there is rainbows after the rain. Like, that's the best way to say it. And through this financial journey, like, thankfully I went through that really hard time to recognize, like, oh man, God, baseball was not your plan for me. Look at my life, 7 children, where I'm at. That would not have happened had I continued to play. So I look at now, even on this financial journey where I didn't want to join it at first, but knew he was leading me to it. The very beginning of this journey was like this steep cliff dive of finances. So it was like a seriously difficult season where we got in such a tight spot financially where all of our savings were depleted. All of our credit cards were ran up. We were refinancing our home just to take cash out to pay off debt. And meanwhile, people are asking me for advice with their money. So I'm living this duality of,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you can ask. I can.
No, yeah. Well, because you have a whole family, right? When you're making these transitions. And when people look at certain fields or entrepreneurship, the risk can hold a lot of people back, even if it's somewhat secure, because there's a cost to living and it can feel almost unbiblical to take a risk. So how did you balance that? Like, God, what kind of risk should I be taking? How are you guiding me through this actually?
It felt like he led me. That's the only reason I did it. That's the only way to make it. Like, if I felt like he was leading this charge, and I've always been really mindful of that since my playing career, if I feel like he's leading it, then it is my job to put some feet on those prayers. So I needed to take that risk because it was him leading me there. It wasn't me calculating the options and saying, like, if I do this, this is a potential outcome. If I do that, that's the potential outcome. As a matter of fact, had I been able to calculate and known what was happening, I probably wouldn't have wanted, like, I would really not. Like, I ended up needing to borrow my mother's credit card to buy food for my children. That is,
oh gosh,
not alone, like, just the disappointment I felt in myself was one thing, but to see my wife just like disappointed, that's the wrong word. She was struggling to believe in me. She did believe in me, but she's wondering when we're going to get off of this train.
That was actually what I was going to ask you next. Because you've taken some big leaps and like big shifts as a couple, and all of it's been done in your marriage, during your marriage. So
during our marriage,
how does that work going into a risk together as a couple?
Well, we pray about it and we communicate about it. There's no other way around it. Is that, hey, Addie, I feel like God's calling me to launch my own thing. I think it's time. Or, hey, Addie, I feel like God's calling me into this new career and I don't know why, because I don't think I want to be into it, but I think I'm supposed to take this wealth management job. And she believes in me, and we have this agreement that if either of us feel like God's putting something on our hearts that we're supposed to do, it's neither of our jobs to step in between them and God. Like, if she feels like God's calling her in a certain direction, well, I'm not about to step between her and God. It's my job to say, okay, I believe in you, and I'm obedient. So that's really how we've made these decisions. It doesn't mean it's like I told you, when she's at home trying to keep it together and I'm trying to earn an income and not doing a great job at it, and borrowing money for groceries just to feed the family, that was hard. But even back to Romans 8:28, I've taken screenshots, and one day I'll do something with them, of all of those times, all the hard times, because I believe that I'm going through that for a purpose to serve other people in some way, shape, or form. And as an advisor, I can tell you now, I've had hundreds of conversations with people about their money, and it makes me way more empathetic. And quite honestly, I connect with their situation so deeply that the advice I'm often giving is not textbook advice, because my life's not textbook, their life's not textbook, and I know what they're experiencing. So I know how to work through it much more real than a lot of people out there, for sure, than a textbook.
You bring up something really interesting. As entrepreneurs and leaders, I think people get the perception that everyone's super financially sound or super well off or super liquid. But that perception can keep people from working with an advisor because they don't want to walk into the office and say, I make plenty of money, but I have none. Yeah. So what do you say to someone who's listening who is an entrepreneur and doesn't have the liquidity that they think in their mind they should have, or they think they're worse off than everybody else and they're afraid to actually talk to anyone about a plan?
Yeah, I would tell that person that the first step is awareness. I sound like I'm an AA commercial ad, like admitting you have a problem, but really that's kind of it. You've got to acknowledge that you can be sound, financially savvy with your business numbers, but if your personal life feels like the Wild West, then you've got to get a handle on it first. Like, you've got to first check on those numbers, understand where the money's going out. You probably understand what's coming in, but know what's going out. It's really just, at the end of the day, math, and math's not an opinion. That's the best part about it. Yeah. You can just look at that. But then I would say you probably need to find somebody, not because you should be embarrassed or because you're in a bad spot, but because your genius, your greatness is not managing your personal wealth. Your genius is in building this thing, which will always be your biggest return on capital, your biggest investment, your biggest asset. It's the business. It's you. You doing what you're great at will earn you the biggest return over time. I don't care if it's investments or anything else. Like, lean into that and acknowledge that me worrying about this personal stuff is wasting or pulling attention and distracting me from doing the thing that's going to solve that problem and actually fill me up. Now, I'm not saying bury your head in the sand and hand it over to somebody to handle and hope they do a good job. Very much be aware of what's happening, be in the know of what's happening, but take somebody whose genius is managing that so that you can feel confident and in the know of what's happening with your personal life without having to be the one to pull the levers, because it's distracting you from the thing that really is most important for you, for your calling in your life.
That's actually really a great viewpoint, because I find sometimes, especially in the church world, like in church circles, it's do it all yourself. Like, it's biblical to do it all yourself, manage your house yourself, like make all your own meals, like do all these things. Yeah. But you can't do that and sometimes run in your calling. So I remember it being transformative to me as a young mother, hearing a female pastor preaching. And she said someone had come up to her and talked about her house on Instagram. And she was like, well, yeah, I have a housekeeper. And the woman was like, almost like dumbfounded, because we're almost trained that we can't ask for help if we're good believers with good balanced lives. So that's really important to hear someone say, you've got to, whatever you want to do the most of, you've got to take some of those other things off your plate and get people who are gifted in it to do it. That's how the body of Christ works.
You got it. Well said.
So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's perfectly, you said it better than me.
Oh, no. No, you're good. You're good. We needed that insight. I think that's really important, because I have talked to several leaders lately who maybe they're just insecure about it, but their businesses are so successful, they feel like they can't tell anybody.
Totally right.
That they need help.
That's a big thing, because at some point, because society says you can't talk about it. So if you can't talk about it, then somehow magically you're supposed to just learn about it and know about it, but you can't talk to people about it. So when you have a lot of money, you must know what you're doing, because you have a lot of money. Yeah. So I see you with a lot of money, you must know what to do with money. I see you with no money, you must not know what to do with money. That's how it works. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works from society's perspective, but that's not
Right.
reality. Reality is actually the opposite, where it's like, as a matter of fact, as an entrepreneur building this, whatever I built, I've spent all of my time focused on that thing, that I didn't spend a minute figuring out personal wealth and investments or anything like that, because my time was dedicated to building this thing that all of a sudden is earning me money. And now I'm like, holy smokes, what do I do with it? It's no different than an athlete who's playing baseball and then signs this big signing bonus that's like, okay, now all of a sudden I'm a multimillionaire. Overnight, I didn't learn money. I don't know what to do with this thing. So
those are all the horror stories we hear in the sports industry, honestly.
yeah, I mean, and that's the truth. It's just, it's not burying your head in the sand. That's the big differentiator. So when you say the body of Christ works that way to support people in their own geniuses, I agree. I think on the finances side, you have to be your own advocate, just like in healthcare. You have to know what's happening.
Yeah, that's good.
But you don't need to be the one pulling the levers. You need to understand it, because that's your wealth, your money, your life. But you should have a partner in that that's explaining it to you in a way that you understand, that you feel good about and confident, and you know why the decisions are being made, so that you can go and focus on the thing that you're great at without this heavy weight on your back, you know?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Now, how are you bringing your faith into the day-to-day now that you've got a business, you've got 7 kids, you've got plenty going on? How do you just incorporate your faith into that?
I start every day with quiet time. It's to me like the tithe on time, you know, like you
good.
give the first fruits of your income, that's what you give for a financial tithe. But I look at the day the same way. Like, I want to give God the first part of my day. I'll start there, and then I can't spend the day without talking to Him, praying with Him, talking about it. But that's how I bring it into an everyday. I'm active with a men's group, and we're studying different passages, and I'll lean into that every morning. But that's the best way that I can describe it, is I just start the day with it.
Right back to the mundane thing you talked about in baseball.
Yeah,
right. Keep it structured.
Do the boring thing.
What are some systems that are like newer for you that you're using right now in the industry to grow your business and to grow your company and what you're doing?
I'm using Chat GPT a lot for all kinds of things, just doing research or putting together PDFs faster than I can, compiling, aggregating data that for me would take more time that it'll just pull together quickly. I'm also using Gemini, which is Google's version. In particular, I'm using Gemini to create prompts for, it's called Veo 3. It's Google's video production software, text to video. So Veo 3 is another thing I've been using to create what I think is going to be a pretty cool ad campaign one day for me.
That's cool.
So those are some of the AI forward-thinking techs for now. I got some others sort of in my back pocket that I think are next step after a few of these dominoes start to fall.
I want to never make a slide deck again. I want AI to make all of them.
Right?
That's my goal in life.
I love that. I'm with you on that goal.
Get it off my plate.
You aren't kidding. Man. That's not my genius.
So where all do you serve clients? Tell us your business name. I'm going to say it in the intro so people have heard it, but we haven't said it again in this interview.
Yeah. My business is called Reconstructing Wealth, and the website is reconstructingwealth.com. We're a fee-only registered investment advisor. That's the fancy industry term for saying we're just an independent financial advising firm. We invest on people's behalf. We create financial plans, but it's called Reconstructing Wealth because over the long term, my goal is to quite literally reconstruct people's relationship with money, because I've seen as my relationship with finances has changed, my life has changed, because I no longer am emotional. Well, I take that back. I'm human, so there's some emotion to it, but I am way more emotionally detached than I've ever been from my money.
Wow.
It's much more like seeing chess pieces on a chessboard, and I'm using them effectively as a tool to accomplish my calling. And if I can get people to see that and use money that way, I know firsthand generationally, my life is going to be quite changed. My children's lives are going to be changed. And for future Moritzios, or they'll never look at money the same way, and they'll be healthier for it. And if I can do that in people's lives and change and let them be the generational chain breaker, then I think quite literally the world can change over time. So that's why it's called Reconstructing Wealth. You can also find me. Instagram is the best way to find me. It's just my name, at Matt Moritzio. And I will say, anybody that hears this and is interested, send me a DM. I will send you a course, and it's free. It's just an email address, I guess is what it costs. And it's about 3 videos that really dives into like the nuts and bolts of your relationship with money, the how-tos of personal finance, some science-backed research on it. Like, it's got a lot of stuff, and it's a light lift. And if you want to get better with your money, I mean, that's a great place to start.
That's really cool. Well, I'm going to be expecting mine as well.
I'll send it to you. Perfect.
I would like my copy. Oh my gosh. Matt, thank you so much. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure we talk about?
I mean, we covered so much. I think that I just want to hammer home the point that we talked about AI. We just finished with the relationship piece with money. I want people listening to know, whether you've got a bunch of money or no money or somewhere in between, that you are not incapable of learning how the personal finance game works. That was a big misunderstanding by me going into it. I thought you had to have this pedigree of personal finance. My aunt, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, everybody like spent their time in Harvard Business School and all the things.
Yeah.
It's just not true. The reality is it's not true. And with AI today, if you don't know where to start, or if there's a sticking point, a bottleneck anywhere in your personal finance journey, go ahead and talk to ChatGPT if you're too embarrassed to speak to a human, because I get it. It can be emotional. I would encourage you at one point to speak to somebody human, but speak to Chat and say, hey, this is my problem with my money. I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to invest it. I make a lot of it, but I can't keep any of it. Whatever your problem is, ask Chat, what do I do about this? What questions should I be asking about this? Who should I speak? Anything. That's a great place to kickstart your financial journey, because ChatGPT is going to aggregate way more data than you and I can even fathom to come up with that answer for you. So you're going to have a really well thought out answer as a place to kickstart or continue your personal finance journey. And it's not above you, I promise. You're able to, if I can figure it out, you can figure it out.
I love this. Baby step to AI, then to an actual person. That's going to be our goal. So ask AI, then get a human, then call Matt.
I love it. Then call Matt. Sure. I love it.
Call Matt. Well, thank you so much. It was great connecting. Thanks for all of your insight, and reconstructingwealth.com. That'll be in the show notes. But Matt, it's great having you. Have a great weekend.
Candace, thank you so much. It was really an honor to share this. Really, really love your platform. So thanks for letting me join it.
Well, thank you so much. It's great having you. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye.